Hello everyone, this is Breaking Brian. We're back with another deep dive for The Walking Dead. This will talk about things that are in the show that are and are not from the comics. Let's begin. So the episode starts out at the Green family farm. Everything is all quiet and we see the barn. This will become important later. The group and the Greens are picking up and collecting rocks, and we get good footage of Beth Green and her boyfriend Jimmy. They're collecting rocks to build a rock pile for Otis's funeral. In the comics, Otis is also never buried, but not because they couldn't go back for his body like here in the show. In the comics, Otis is also eaten by zombies, but it's in the prison, and the group for some reason was too stupid to recognize his body, so they burned him with the zombies. So yeah, Otis never got a funeral in the comics, and actually in the comics we also never see his funeral like here on the show. We then see Daryl's bike as he's driving down the road and heading to the farm. We see the others following closely behind him as Shane and Glenn look on. Shane is still wearing Otis's clothes. In the house, Herschel checks Carl's temperature and says that his fever has gone down. In the comics, Carl is pretty much on his feet right after Herschel treats his gunshot wound. Lori and Rick look on, and Carl wakes up and asks about Sophia. Rick then lies to Carl, saying that they found her because he doesn't want to worry Carl, and Carl goes back to sleep. As you guys know, Sophia never disappears in the comics. T-Dog then shows up and says that the group is here. We see the group members reunite as Dale asks about Carl. Rick says that he'll live thanks to Herschel and his people, and everyone hugs it out. We then have Otis's funeral, where Herschel does a eulogy for Otis. In the comics, Herschel doesn't really do this for the group's funerals, but he does officiate a wedding. Herschel then asks Shane if he can say a few words for Otis for them, and Shane tries to refuse, saying that he's not really good at that. But poor Patricia begs Shane, saying that Shane was there in Otis's final moments, and she wants to know that his death had meaning. I won't lie, the actress here was really amazing, and my heart cried out for her loss. Shane, feeling guilty about murdering Otis last night, lies, saying how Otis went out like a hero to give him enough time to escape with the bags and save Carl's life. However, obviously, Shane didn't consider the fact that he had both medical bags on him and the Colt Python that Rick gave Otis earlier. Shane states that because Otis gave him his life, he is about to live and in turn save Carl's life. This makes Otis a hero. In the comics, Otis dies like a complete loser, and nobody saw it, and nobody really cared when he died, minus Patricia, who gets over it pretty fast. He also wasn't murdered in the comics, and he also wasn't remembered as a hero. We then get the Walking Dead intro. After the intro, Herschel and the group talk about Sophia. We can see that Shane is wearing a different outfit. Not really sure where he got it, as all of Shane's clothes were destroyed back in the CDC explosion, and he didn't grab any new clothes back on the highway, so that's pretty weird. Anyways, Maggie brings them a map of the county over the car, which shows the terrain elevations. It turns out Rick and them have only searched the tip of the iceberg, while searching for Sophia because the area is huge. In the background, you can see Glenn setting up a tent camp. In the comics, the group doesn't really set up tents at the Green family farm. Herschel, however, tells Rick and Shane that they aren't fit to go out there and search, as Rick needs to recover from donating so much blood to Carl, and Shane busted his ankle. Daryl is going to go off on his own later. Dale is too old, and T-Dog is also still hurt, and Glenn is Glenn. Herschel also doesn't want the group to have their guns while on his land, and Shane tries to advise against this, but Rick plays good cop and says that they'll respect Herschel's rules. Rick pulls out his Colt Python on the hood of the car, as does Shane with his gun. Not really sure why they did this, as they'll just have to pick them up to put them in the bags anyways. Shane then asks what if Sophia gets bit, and Rick tells Shane to do what needs to be done, which is not really a thing you should say to a secret murderer. Herschel then looks at Maggie in a very suspicious look, clearly hiding something. Maggie then says she's going to go on a pharmacy run and get some more medical supplies. Rick convinces her to take Glenn. Rick also is able to convince Herschel to have Dale on top of the RV with his rifle, keeping watch as everyone will feel safer. This kind of thing doesn't happen in the comics. Shane then brings the bag of guns outside from the RV, just a reminder that that bag weighs over 100 pounds. He bumps into Lori, and she tells him that Carl's okay and resting, and we get an awkward scene where Shane is like, "When you asked me to stay last night, did you mean it?" And Lori says, yes, she did. Now, with them, as you guys know in the comics, Shane died a while ago and Lori has moved on from him. Maggie goes over to Glenn and is like, hey, I heard you're fast and get in and out. And Glenn probably thinks Maggie wants to have sex with him, making Glenn feel really awkward. Dale then shows up and asks Maggie where they can get water, and Maggie tells him about their wells and how to collect the water. This doesn't really make sense, as if you guys remember in the premiere, Shane found a huge truck full of clean water for them, so they really should have more than enough to drink for everyone. Anyways, Glenn is confused that Maggie is going to get him a horse. Thank God it's not for something else. Shane then goes to the picnic table to clean the guns, and Andrea is like, oof, you're gonna roll over? I just got my gun again, and now you're surrendering our guns. And Shane is like, yeah, we need to respect Hershel's rules a bit, Andrea. She sits down to learn the guns as Shane teaches her. Totally original to the show. After that, we see Daryl leaving the house to go look for Sophia, as the other men, as like I said before, are too busy or ill to help him. Rick says that Daryl doesn't have to go out there alone, as they have a base now, but he doesn't really suggest who Daryl can go with. Daryl leaves anyway, saying that his other plans fell through for the day. Rick then sees Hershel and is like, we could give you more space and set up at the barn. Rick, that's not really any further from the house, and it's full of spiders, but luckily Hershel throws down the idea. As we know, Hershel is keeping a secret with the barn. We'll find that out soon enough. Hershel then tells Rick how they are complete strangers, and after Sophia is found and Carl is recovered, he expects everyone to leave his home. Meanwhile, Glenn is watching Maggie through the binoculars and pitches another tent, but Lori catches him. She gives him the medicine list and gives him another list, a private one this time, for an item only for her specifically. Glenn asks where he can find it, and Lori is like the feminine hygiene section. I don't really understand why Lori didn't just write a pregnancy tester to make it simple, but yeah. In the comics, Lori never asked Glenn to make a run for her like this. After that, we see T-Dog and Dale going to the well, and T-Dog tries to apologize for what he said back at the highway, and Dale is like, what are you talking about? You didn't say anything, which confuses us and the audience, and T-Dog himself about his rant during his fever, which makes everyone possibly think it was a hallucination. I don't know. Dale then looks down, hearing something down the well, and just as T-Dog is about to drink some water, Dale stops him and is like, yeah, you don't want to drink that nasty butt water. We then see the group showing up at the well, and it turns out there's a gross, bloated, fat walker in the well. Now, in the comics, it's uncertain if drinking zombie-contaminated water will kill and turn a person, but it is very likely. However, Maggie said earlier that the well is for the cows, which means that the cows have been drinking it and possibly been poisoned for weeks. Whether or not it makes them sick or kill them, like with humans, is unknown. Also, in the comics, there's never a point where a walker falls in the Green family well. T-Dog and Glenn think that they should just shoot the zombie, but Andrea says that's a stupid plan because it'll contaminate the water. Shane agrees, saying they have to get it out and then kill it. Now, look, I'm no expert, but I'm pretty sure that the walker crapping in the well for the last few weeks has already done that job. Meanwhile, far away, Hershel and Rick are overlooking the landscape on the hill. It looks like also that they drove here with a truck. I guess it was Rick who drove it? I'm not really sure. As they look over the field, Hershel says that he thinks about God in moments like this, and Rick says he tries not to think about religion and God anymore, at least because as you guys remember in the premiere in the church, he asked Jesus for a sign, and Carl was immediately shot after. Hershel asks Rick if he really thinks that after all the horrible stuff his family and group have been through, can he really not say that God was helping them through those trials? Rick says that God has a funny sense of humor and goes back to his map. Back at the well, the group tries to trick the water zombie with a canned ham, but it doesn't work, unfortunately, so everyone becomes a racist and decides to use Glenn as bait. T-Dog is the only other ethnic guy here, and he's about 100 pounds more than Glenn, so yeah, it has to be Glenn. They slowly lower Glenn down the well, and like it's a Final Destination movie, the handle breaks out of nowhere, despite the fact that Glenn is really light, so the group panics. Glenn seeks deeper in the well as the zombie tries to get him. Glenn screams on the top of his lungs at the morons above to pull him up, and despite the fact that it's only 6 people pulling a light Glenn, they take forever to pull him back up. Glenn then walks away, and it's revealed he was able to tie the walker with the rope. I'm not really sure how he was able to do this though. Meanwhile, in the woods, Daryl looks for Sophia. You can see that he doesn't have a gun, like I said episodes before. Daryl never really travels with a gun. He enters a random cabin in the woods and calls out for Sophia. He looks around, but she is unfortunately nowhere to be found. Daryl then goes into the kitchen and discovers a recently eaten can of sardines in the trash, implying Sophia may have been here. He looks in the pantry and then finds a small bed, further hinting that Sophia was also here, but he unfortunately missed her. Daryl then goes outside and calls out for Sophia again, but no response back. Daryl does, however, find some Cherokee rose flowers at the side. Meanwhile, back at the farm and at the well, the group is pulling the fat well walker out of the well. Unfortunately, they didn't see that it was stuck and it gets ripped in half. The bottom half of the zombie and its guts fall into the well, contaminating it, making everything completely pointless. Dale suggests they seal off this well from the others, but how exactly are they supposed to do that? Anyway, T-Dog then bashes the zombie's head in as he's pissed off that everything was for nothing. Back at the highway, Shane, Andrea, Carol see that Sophia once again didn't meet up at the sign place they made with the car. Carol then cries. After that, Shane and Andrea, for some reason, walk in the woods. Yeah, remember earlier when Herschel told Shane not to walk, like, at all, or he hurt his foot for like a month? Yeah, I guess he was a complete fat liar. Anyways, Andrea and Shane think about the area, that it would be good for gun shooting, even though it's way too far from the farm and too close to the highway. Anyways, Shane tells Andrea how sometimes when you have a gun and your life is in danger, you don't really have time to think, you just act. It's either you or them in a life and death situation. Andrea listens, but obviously Shane is hinting at himself murdering Otis last night, but Andrea doesn't catch it. On the road, Glenn and Maggie go to the pharmacy on horseback, and Glenn tries to make small talk with her, after seeing T-Dog bashing that zombie's head in. They make it to the pharmacy and enter it as Glenn gives Maggie the list. Glenn tells her, so that he can split up, that he's going to get some general stuff they need. After Maggie leaves, Glenn looks for Lori's item and finds it, but Maggie comes back early, so he panics and grabs a random box of condoms. Maggie asks if he has a girlfriend she doesn't know about. Maggie, the only women left in the Atlanta group is Lori, who is married, Carol, who's old and daughter is missing, and Andrea, so, no, definitely not. Maggie even asks if there's something wrong with her, like, oh, I'm not good enough for you to have sex with? Glenn then panics and mumbles his words as Maggie just states she'll sleep with him. This is similar to the comics, except it happens back at the farmhouse. In the comics, Maggie notices Glenn was staring at Carol during dinner, and Glenn tells her that he just finds her pretty, but knows that he probably won't end up with her. Maggie then says she'll fudge Glenn because she doesn't have a lot of options and her boyfriend is missing, probably dead. Now, back in the show, Maggie also mentions there's not a lot of options, but she doesn't have an assumed dead boyfriend. So yeah, like in the show, Maggie doesn't have a lot of options. This makes me wish the world ended and billions of people died, because I want to get lucky like Glenn here. Anyways, they kiss and get on with it. Meanwhile, Rick and Herschel make it back to the farm from their drive, and Rick sees looking at the group relaxing and setting up camp. He asks in a slightly begging way for Herschel to reconsider about making them leave when it's time, because it's dangerous out there and he's a father. Rick tells Herschel he lied to Carl earlier about them finding Sophia because he hates Carl's suffering, and Herschel then talks about his own father, who was a horrible, abusive drunk man. This is very different because in the comics, Herschel tells Rick he actually loved his father so much he moved his entire family into the farm after his father died to honor him, while in the show, Herschel says that he was not even there at his father's deathbed and doesn't regret it. Herschel then says that if Rick and them respect his rules, he will consider letting Rick and them stay. Rick then thanks him and heads inside the house. Lori is sitting with Carl, as Lori says Carl asked about him earlier. Glenn and Maggie make it back to the farm, as Glenn smiles, having gotten laid. In the comics, Glenn reveals that he's had sex before with Maggie, while in the show, he was probably a virgin. It's unclear. Also, Maggie says that it was a one-time thing, which disappoints him. In the books, Maggie actually wants to pursue a relationship with Glenn after their first time. Herschel sees and greets Maggie, as Maggie acts all innocent, pretending nothing happened. Glenn then gives Lori the special item, and then she leaves. Daryl enters the RV and sees that it's super nice and clean. Carol reveals that she fixed up the place for Sophia when she returns, but really we know she's trying to keep busy and not go crazy waiting for her. Daryl then gives her a beer bottle with a Cherokee rose in it that he found and tells her the story about how in the past when Native Americans were driven off their land, the parents who lost their children in the Trail of Tears were very depressed and used the flower as a symbol of hope. And he says that there's no flowers for his brother Merle, who is still missing, but says that he thinks this one is for Sophia and that she's still alive. As you guys know, this whole season is all about a slim chance, hope. After that, he leaves. Back in the house that night, Rick wakes up as Carl also wakes up. Rick apologizes to Carl for lying to him earlier about Sophia, and I gotta ask, who is cleaning up Carl's stool? Anyways, Carl says it's okay and forgives Rick. After that, Rick says they will find Sophia because he truly believes that. Rick then makes a joke about how both him and Carl were shot, so he hands Carl his hat, giving it to him to keep. Now in the comics, Rick gives Carl his hat off screen after he reunites with him and Lori back in the Atlanta camp. Carl wasn't shot yet. Rick then sets his badge on the nightstand as Lori looks on and hugs Rick's. In the insider for the episode, they confirmed that with the world over, Carl being shot and Sophia missing, Rick doesn't really believe in the badge anymore, so what's the point? In the comics, Rick stops wearing his police outfit after they get to the prison. Also, Rick puts away 2 badges in the drawer, but didn't Rick only wear one on his uniform? Where'd the second one come from? After that, Lori goes outside. I guess Rick is asleep and no one is keeping watch. It's not like people have died from not doing this. Anyways, Lori goes into the field and makes sure she's not being followed. Lori then stops and opens her tester and bends down, peeing on it. In the comics, Lori never uses a pregnancy tester. She just somehow knew that she was pregnant. So after show Lori pees on the test, she looks at it and sees that it is a positive, confirming she is definitely pregnant. Lori then cries. She is very shocked and cries in the field at this revelation. After that, the episode ends. And that's going to be it for my deep dive for Season 2, Episode 4. So yeah, hardly anything in this episode based off the comics. The only things that were similar was Lori being pregnant and Glenn and Maggie hooking up. So the episode was mostly show filler and expansion. I will see you guys next time for the deep dive for Episode 5.